So before I get into reincarnation specifically, I want to make sure that you guys watching understand that there is an overwhelming amount of empirical evidence for reincarnation. And for you to understand that, let's just talk about the meaning of the word empirical, right? It's a fancy way of saying observation. We observed it. It's like, again, an example I often use is the sun rises in the east. And if somebody goes, no, it doesn't, you're going to look at him like, what are you talking about? Because it's empirical. You can literally stand outside at 6 o'clock in the morning and look east, and there's the sun coming up. It's empirical, right? Okay. Which means that it doesn't matter if you disagree. It doesn't matter if people try to debate it. It doesn't matter. They can do that all they want. They're just delusional. That's all. And I don't mean to call them delusional in an insulting way. It is, by definition, a delusion. The sun does rise in the east. Now, next time you hear somebody tell you there's no evidence for reincarnation at all, that's crazy talk, just hop on YouTube and type in reincarnation stories and watch a few of these marathons for yourself. Start watching documentary films about this, guys. I mean, look at, this guy here. They're making 2-hour-long videos. And then, there's more, obviously, that you can watch. And some of the individual cases, I suppose, you could invalidate. You could say, well, that's not really convincing. They just think that they are this person from a past life. What they really need is some kind of third-party verification, right? And I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a minute, but realize that if you sit here and scroll through these videos and start watching these, you are going to get that. You're going to get a lot of that. You're going to get third-party validation, third-party verification. You are going to get a lot of that. And then there's other things too, like people that have near-death experiences that we need to talk about, because today's video, reincarnation, we're talking about reincarnation. Well, we're really talking about the soul and how it works and why it does what it does. Science is a methodology. It is not an institution. It is not a bunch of people in white lab coats in a laboratory. It's not somebody's opinion. It's not a building with people in it. It's not even necessarily experimentation itself, right? Like people conducting experiments and stuff like that. You could call some of those things, you could call them scientific, perhaps, but science itself is a methodology. The scientific method is the best way that we have to wean fact from fiction. So, doing some background research, making observations, right? You construct a hypothesis, like how we do science, how we test with experiment, how we conduct or construct a hypothesis, how we do background research. In every one of these steps, every single one of these steps is going to be empiricism. We're going to make observations. Now, again, the reason that I'm taking the time to carefully explain this to you is because I want you guys to know that you're not crazy, guys. You're not. You're not. And we're going to talk about the scientific establishment in this video a bit. There's an overwhelming amount of empirical evidence to support reincarnation. And there's even people who have had out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences. We've all heard the stories. You know, the heart stops. The person is maybe laying on the table in the emergency room at the hospital, and next thing you know, they're floating above their body looking down at it. And then you can feel yourself like expanding. So the room 3 doors down, 3 doors away, you know, that's like 5 or 6 walls between you and this other room. The room 3 doors down, the person who is now a spirit floating around, they can hear what people are saying in that room 3 doors away. Just type in near-death experience. Guys, the information is out there. Well, anyway, when the doctors are able to bring the body back to life, the person, they get sucked back into their body, and they start telling them, yeah, I heard these doctors saying these specific things 3 doors down. And there's all these witnesses, and everybody saw them do it, heard them say it, right? That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. There is a ton of empirical evidence that we are beyond the body. Now, why is the system fighting you so hard on this? Well, if you want to know why, just find me over here on this platform. Same name, New World All-Star. All-Star is one word, A-L-L-S-T-A-R. And you're going to learn all about why the system is fighting you on this and telling you that you're crazy. And there's no evidence for things like reincarnation and stuff like that. Now, when the system, the education establishment, you know, government, and I don't know, social media, right, the news media, right, the system, when the system tells you that there is no evidence for reincarnation, what that is called is lying. They are lying to you. It is a lie. Okay? I'm just going to come right out and say it. It's called lying. And they have a vested interest in doing that. Now, you also have the general public, where a large percentage of them are shockingly unable to think for themselves, and even editors at Scientific American who are in denial about real science. They know that the evidence is overwhelming. They know that this is real, but they still have to have a salty attitude when they write editorials about it for Scientific American. We're going to talk about this article. They don't like that they can no longer cling to their atheist religion. Atheism is a religion, guys. That's where it's at, because they're in denial about this stuff. Now that I've cleared the slate and deprogrammed you and made you feel sane, yes, there's a ton of evidence for this stuff. Again, you can hop on YouTube and type in, you know, reincarnation stories or near-death experience stories. Now that we're clear that there's an overwhelming amount of empirical evidence for these things, to the point where the only people who could possibly deny that are, well, science deniers. They're science deniers. They don't care about the scientific method at all. They don't care about truth. They care about looking right. And it's everywhere. You guys know it's true. Now that we have established that, let's talk about what reincarnation is and what the soul is and why it works the way it works. And this is the other thing that you guys are going to think is really cool, is there's also an overwhelming amount of scientific information about how that does work. So, you know, before our modern era, you know, like the age of Pisces, which the age of Aquarius officially kicked off, I think, within the last 3 years. I think it was 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Precursors notwithstanding. right? Because you have like that old 1960s song about the dawning of the age of Aquarius. So the precursors have been around for a while, but we officially switched within the last 3 to 4 years. Aquarius is known for being very like logic and reason, right? Well, the previous age was the Piscean age, and Pisces is very emotional and mysterious. And so in spiritual circles, we relied on mysticism to try to understand these things. In other words, mystery, like, which that's not a cop-out, okay? What you're saying is in mysticism, in the old ways, the age of Pisces, you're saying, look, we know that this is real, we just don't know why, okay? And a lot of the information about reincarnation has been taken out of our ancient texts, like the Bible, which is what this book is talking about. It's out of print. I had somebody, one of my paid coaching students, they went to eBay and found it. So if you really want to check this book out, but this is the story of how they took a lot of that stuff out of the Bible. But that's not the only place that it can be found. And they did kind of a sloppy job because there's still stuff in the Bible about reincarnation. But now in the age of Aquarius, it's the age of science, it's the age of reason, right? Logic, proof. They are able to prove that there is this greater consciousness. Now, I'm going to explain to you what the soul is and how reincarnation works in this video, and then I'm going to list a whole bunch of resources down in the description box down below for you to show you my work, right? You remember like your math teacher in school telling you, well, don't just give me the answer, show me your work. Remember that? So I'm going to do that too, because there's an overwhelming amount of information about how the soul works. It's like, it's not a mystery anymore. Well, welcome to the age of Aquarius. Isn't that cool? We can prove this stuff. We can actually see the mechanism now. That is fucking awesome. And you guys know I'm all about it. I'm all about the science on this channel. So let's start with the soul itself. So the soul itself is a wave of probabilities. Now, the two videos I'm going to reference down below for you are two videos about a thing called the double slit experiment, where they observed it's called the collapse of the wave function. Is a particle a wave or a particle? Right? Like physical matter, like an electron, is it a wave or a particle? And what that experiment proved, and watch them both. I like the bowling ball one the best, but there's two down below, two videos that I'll reference. They're short to explain the double slit experiment. And what the double slit experiment showed is that matter is made out of energy. And that's how we ended up here with a thing called information realism. Physics is pointing inexorably to mind. And again, this is from Scientific American. I'll link the article down below for you. And they explain it properly in this article. Matter is done away with, and only information itself is taken to be ultimately real. Matter is done away with, and only information itself is taken to be ultimately real. This abstract notion, called information realism, is philosophical in character, but it has been associated with physics from its very inception. Now, the editor who wrote this article begrudgingly admits, yes, we are going... This is where science is going. It is inexorable. Yes, this is where the establishment of science, the physics community, physicists, this is where things are going, into this theory of information realism, which is saying that the universe is mind. It's mental. Okay? And that sounds fucking weird. But again, the evidence is absolutely pointing to that. Now, the problem I have with this is something we're going to talk about a little later. But the problem I have with it is that this particular author, this is the Scientific American magazine, which is a scientific journal. He's got a very salty attitude about information realism, and it shows if you go read the article. Again, I'll link it down below for you. He admits, yeah, this is where things are going, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Well, why is it like that, mister? Why do you got to have such a salty attitude when you're writing this editorial piece? Because it challenges his religious belief system, which is called atheism. That's why he doesn't like it. But he has to admit, yeah, the evidence is there and you're not going to stop this. This is where science is going. Well, that's not scientific to have a salty attitude about it. Is science your opinion? No, if the evidence is there. So that's a little quick detour I took right there about the nature of the scientific establishment, the scientific community, where you have materialist scientists that are like in denial about this stuff. They're called materialist scientists because they subscribe to the belief that only hard physical matter is allowed in your research. We're not allowed to use anything else. And material science is very valid, but it's incomplete. That's the problem. It's not that material science is bad, it's just incomplete. But material scientists cling to that because you get to deny the existence of a higher intelligence, right? And this argument between material scientists and information science, it goes way back to like the days when, you know, people started figuring out that the Earth orbits around the sun instead of everything orbiting around the Earth. So when they figured that out, instead of having a reasoned conversation, the king just said, well, you're going to jail, or we're going to put you under house arrest. Why? Because I figured out that the Earth revolves around the sun. That's why. Or we're going to execute you, you know, or whatever it is. So that's why there's that kind of butting of heads in the science world between material scientists and information scientists, okay? So that's why there's the controversy, and that's also how the system is able to trick you, is because they still teach material science in school only, and they tell you they don't teach information science. They don't teach this stuff. Guys, there's information about physics that's been around since the days of Albert Einstein, over 100 years, and they don't teach it in school still. Like how time is not linear. They don't really talk about that in school and stuff. Why? Well, it's because, guys, the system has a vested interest in getting you to think that you are limited, that you're just a bag of bones. Nobody knows what happens to you when you die. There's no soul, there's no reincarnation, there's no telepathy, and there's no evidence. And if you want to know why they have a vested interest in doing that, again, over here, guys, find me over there. And then they lie and they go, there's no evidence. Right, okay, there's a whole bunch of evidence. Now, the soul is a wave. Let's go back to the double slit experiment. The soul is a wave of probabilities. Again, down below, I'll link the 2 videos about the double slit experiment for you. So let's talk about what I mean by wave, Because this is the thing about this that I want you to get. It's just information. It's not tangible. So again, when they started digging into matter, into things, matter, material, right? Hence the name, material science. They found molecules, and then they found atoms, and then they found electrons, protons, neutrons, and then they found quarks, gluons, neutrinos, now the Higgs boson particle. So every time they dig a layer deeper, they find energy. And even the most staunch, table-pounding atheist material scientist is going to begrudgingly admit that they have never proven the existence of matter. They've never proven the existence of matter. It's energy. Well, what is energy? Well, that's what we're talking about. It's a wave. What is the soul? It's a wave of probabilities. And when I explain it to you here, it's going to sound kind of abstract. So let's start with a wave. So I got a rock. I'm going to go to the lake or the pond, and I'm going to throw this in the pond. And when it lands in the water, a wave moves out away from it in a circle, right? You guys can visualize that, right? Are you with me? You throw a rock in the pond, and you see the wave move out away from where the rock hit the water. Now, let's talk about the wave. So we're going to say this here is my water molecule. It's way bigger than an actual water molecule, but we're going to do a visualization here, all right? So here's the rock. We throw it into the water, into the pond. Now, the water molecule, which is at the same location where the rock hits the water, so like right here, the rock hits the water. Does this water molecule, which is in the same location where the rock hit the water, does this water molecule actually travel out and away from where the rock hit? No. And you know that. You know that's illogical. What really happens is the water molecule just goes up and down. It stays in the same local area, but it moves up and down. So what does that make a wave? It makes it a disturbance. It's not actual, like the particles moving from one location to another. It's just a disturbance. The wave itself, however, that disturbance seems to move about. So that's a wave. Now, out there in outer space, picture empty space, a vacuum. The soul is a disturbance in what appears to be the vacuum. It's a wave. And if you're having a hard time with that, I've got just the thing for you. Tell you what, I will put on the screen for you now a picture of gravity, like what gravity is, okay? Now, everybody has been shown, even in high school, I believe they teach this at some point, gravity is really the bending of space around an object. So like if I'm holding a rubber sheet with both hands and you're holding the other end of this rubber sheet, and I place this rock in the middle of the rubber sheet, it's going to bend the rubber sheet inward. Right. So gravity is where an object in space, in the vacuum, or what appears to be a vacuum, is actually bending the space. And so objects, that's why objects fall towards, like smaller objects, fall towards the bigger object. That's why like the moon is held about in the Earth's gravity, because it's really falling towards the Earth. However, the momentum of the moon, because it's moving around the Earth at a certain rate of speed, it creates this equilibrium, right? Which cancels out the gravity and suspends the moon. And they call that an orbit. That's why you see video of astronauts in space, in orbit, they're weightless, because it's the energy of the motion moving around the Earth, the speed cancels out the gravity. But gravity is the bending of space around an object. So space itself appears to be some kind of field, some kind of form. And this, by the way, what I'm explaining to you about gravity, this is one of the major components of Einstein's theory of relativity, how he kind of figured out how this stuff all kind of works. He's the one that figured that out, like what gravity is. He also predicted that we should be able to see light traveling interstellar, like across space, but bending around objects. And so that's why, you know, like the Hubble Space Telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, you can read articles online about how they've got like a stereo image of the same galaxy or the same like nebula out there that they're taking a picture of. Why? Why am I getting a stereo image of the same item, the same galaxy or nebula? Well, it's because the light, there's an object between the telescope, me, and the galaxy that we're looking at. There's me here, and then there's the galaxy there, and there's an object. There must be an object between us. And then they find out that there is something between us. And why I'm getting a stereoscopic image is because the light is bending around that object. So space is curved. You can have waves in outer space, in the vacuum. And that's really how this works. And now the science has gotten to the point where we're starting to recognize that the empty space, what we thought of as empty space, is information. Okay? Now, if you haven't seen my video called Science Proves the Law of Attraction, I'll link it down below for you. And I'm really going beyond, way beyond the law of attraction in that video. What I'm trying to show you is that conventional physicists, big names, Lothar Schafer, Greg Shaiton, Max Tegmark, Christoph Koch, on and on, guys with multiple PhDs. You know, there's others that have like Nobel Prize laureates. They've written hundreds of peer-reviewed research papers about this stuff. They're in charge of large university science departments and stuff like this, right? People like that. Those are the people that are talking about, yeah, we think the universe is mind. We think the universe is mental. Interesting. It's some kind of information. Yeah, the universe is the mind of God. If you go all the way back to Hermetic philosophy, Hermes Trismegistus, that's what he said. This was 6,000 years ago or so. Hermes said that, yeah, the universe is mind. And now science is proving it. Even the religion of atheism is starting to begrudgingly admit, yeah, this is where we're going. And there's no stopping it. Well, of course that's where we're going. We can prove it. We can prove that the universe is alive. So, what is this field that we are bending space around? Or that we are bending around objects? What is this empty space, this field, if you will? What is that? Which again is bending around objects, curving space around them, which is what creates gravity. What is that? What is the empty space? Consciousness. And there are different levels of consciousness. This is where you're going to get into quantum field theory. The Large Hadron Super Collider in France, and it's so big, a portion of it goes into a neighboring country. It's a huge atom smasher, okay? Highly technologically advanced. They have proven the existence of the Higgs field, and they're starting to realize, so there's an electron field, there's a photon field, there's the Higgs field. They're starting to realize, wait, this is just going to go on infinitely. There's higher and higher planes of existence. Plane, higher planes of existence. Plane, right? Like a higher plane. So the soul obviously exists on a plane which is beyond light. Now, light itself, you could call the border of the universe. It's the border of the universe. Why? Because nothing can travel faster than light. You can't, it would seem, this could be incorrect, but what we perceive as the universe, it appears that you can't really go outside. You can't really leave the universe. Okay? Because outside the universe would be nothing. It would be a vacuum. But you can't have that. Before the universe, you did not have thing, and you did not have nothing. Emptiness, right? Emptiness, a vacuum. You didn't have that. You didn't have thing either. That's duality. That's relativity. That's what Albert Einstein called that. He called it relativity, thing, nothing. You didn't have either of those. Before the Big Bang, there was no such thing as place. So, can you go outside the universe? Well, we do not think so. Science is thinking that might not be a thing. As strange as that sounds, because if you go outside the universe, that's a place. And all places exist only inside the universe. So, what fills this place that we call the universe? Consciousness. And the soul appears to be a holographic reproduction, a holographic fractal reproduction of the all, of the whole entire universe, which is one big physical and mental creature. So you've got physical objects, planets, stars, space dust, nebulae, things like this, right? Quasars, whatever, galaxies, physical things. And then you have the space, which appears to be a big bath of consciousness, the empty space. It's some kind of a field. There's something there. It's invisible from our point of view, but the nothing is something. Again, this is how gravity works. The nothing bending around objects, light bending around objects. We think the nothingness is information, which again sounds abstract. And it kind of is. This is the best modern science. And again, real scientists, also, if you want to listen to some of these guys talk, you can go to the channels menu of my YouTube channel. Just look for the channels menu. Go there and look for the channel I have featured called Closer to Truth. Now, the narrator, Robert Lawrence Kuhn, he's connected to all of these top shelf physicists, mathematicians, philosophers, and they don't always agree on everything, right? There are things to discuss. There are things to debate, right? But if you watch his videos for long enough, if you go to that channel and just start watching, just go to the videos menu on that YouTube channel, Closer to Truth, and just start watching, you're going to start to get the sense that the entire institution of science is being pulled in this esoteric direction. And again, these are top shelf scientists that he is interviewing, okay? They don't teach this in school. It's not on television. The system wants to control you. They want you to think you're just a bag of bones and that you're limited and that we're not connected and that we're all separate and that you don't have a soul, which is technically true. You are a soul. But if you listen to real scientists talk about this stuff, that's what you're going to find out, is that, yeah, that's a lie. There absolutely is a greater intelligence at work here, and science is proving it. And these scientists that he's talking to are proving it. There's lots of evidence. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence, and these, again, are top shelf scientists. The soul is a wave of probabilities. It exists in this ether. You're not supposed to say ether. That's like bad etiquette in the science world, okay? You're supposed to call it the field, but it's the same kind of thing. So that's the soul. The soul is this wave. It's a disturbance in the vacuum of space. It's not that there's actual physical particles that it's made out of. It's not really made out of physical particles. It's not really that the water molecule physically moves from the contact point of the rock in the water all the way out. It's just a disturbance. So it's the same principle as a water wave in the pond. But the soul itself is the actual sound wave coming out of your speakers when you're listening to music. It's a disturbance in the field. Okay? And it's consciousness. It's this consciousness. It's a waveform. This is, again, I know this is really hard for some of you. It's very abstract. But that's what that is. That's what the soul is. So again, just to review quickly before we sink our teeth into reincarnation in particular, which is easy to understand now that I've given you all this stuff. We've got all the empirical evidence, and now we've got an explanation as to the actual mechanics of the soul. It's this abstract energy form. It's this abstract energy wave. It's a disturbance. Very, very interesting. Information can be stored in a wave, by the way. That's how sound works. They've actually done experiments where they've played sound through a wafer board, which is that you'll see them in like older electronic devices. It's the little electronic board that all of the electrical circuits are attached to. And they'll, through one node, play a sound. The second node receives the sound, records it. You take a little chunk. So let's say it's like a 20-second long sound. So node number 2 records the sound, 20 seconds, and then they take a 1-second little splice of it, turn it around, and replay it back from node 2 in reverse. Node A receives the entire 20-second original recording. So again, that's a fractal, is what that is. Okay? That's fractal technology. So information can be stored in a wave. Okay, they've demonstrated this. Also, consciousness is non-local. I'm going to link for you also of another video down below about thousands of experiments they've done about the non-locality of consciousness and how you can tell that it's out there somewhere. Like there is a field of consciousness, and they've done these repeatable, controlled scientific studies thousands of times and demonstrated that there is this field of consciousness. And for fun, I'll also link down below for you a documentary that I just saw about other scientists doing real science on telepathy and meditation and the power of prayer. Greg Braden appears in the documentary film. So I'll link it down below for you. But what I'm trying to, and I know that's a lot of stuff that I'm linking down below for you, but what I'm trying to demonstrate is, again, that there's an overwhelming amount of evidence for this stuff. Now, reincarnation. I've done all this setup. We're already at 40 something minutes into the video. This part's easy to explain. Now that I've done all this setup, this is your higher self in the energy part of the universe, the wave that we just talked about, the higher planes, and they are beyond time. Physics says that from the perspective of these higher planes, which are information-based, that there is no time. Okay? Time is not linear from those higher perspectives, from those higher planes. So all of these this is reincarnation, right? So here's your past life in the year 1770. There's maybe, I don't know, 1800, 1880. There's a couple more. There's a future reincarnation, right? From the perspective of your higher self, the wave, the soul in the energy part of the universe, all of these individual incarnations are happening simultaneously. Now, here's the other thing that you'll find interesting. Reincarnation is a time machine. Reincarnation is a time machine. So normally when we think of reincarnation, or like if you go get a past life regression, we think exactly in those terms. We're thinking exactly like that. Like I'm going to go into the past, right? I'm going to go into the past. Okay, so you go into the past life regression session thinking, I'm going to see myself riding a horse around town, or riding in a covered wagon or something like that, or driving like an old car from the 1930s. Listening to the radio instead of watching a television. You know how they used to do that, right? Like in the 1930s and stuff. Or whatever. Or you're even further back than that, right? You're a knight in shining armor or something, right? And so you go into the session thinking time, past life, my past life. And so when you talk to the past life regressionist, that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get the past in time. But that's not how time works. Again, scientists have proven that from the perspective of these higher planes, there is no linear time. You experience linear time in the first person. You do. You experience that. But that's not how time really works. Again, this is what we think of when we think of reincarnation. This is the year I was born in this life. This is the year I was born in this life, this life, this life, this life, on and on and on, right? But that's not how time works. What's really going on every time you reincarnate, what we do know to be true about reincarnation is the evolution of consciousness. I think I'm going to call this video How the Soul Works. I think we're going to do that. Because that's really kind of what this is, right? I'm explaining how the soul works. Now, time is not linear. You experience linear time in the first person. In the first person, you experience linear time. But the fact is, reincarnation is a time machine. So let's say you're here, you do the thing that we call die, you go back up to being a wave again, and you go, fuck it, I'm gonna go back here for the next life. And then back here, you do the thing that we call die, you go back up here, all right, I'm gonna go here this time. And then in the next life, you go back here, and then you go here, and then you go here, right? You can hop all around in time. So it's not that time is linear. We know that. It's that the evolution of consciousness is linear. The evolution of consciousness is linear. But you can hop all around in time. So if you go get a past life regression done, you might ask in the first session, okay, I want to do my most recent previous incarnation. Time is not linear. It could be actually in the future or the past. You tell them that, and then see what happens. And then the next session, you go, all right, let's do 2 lifetimes back. All right, now let's do 3 lifetimes back. All right, now let's do 4 lifetimes back. And you keep doing that. You're being very specific. I want to go 4 lifetimes back. I want to go 5 lifetimes back. You're going to find that you're hopping all around in time. But every life lived, your consciousness is increasing and expanding. You are remembering yourself as the wave, actually, is what you're doing. And that's a whole nother topic regarding, like the evolution of soul, like having a spiritual awakening, what that is, why it works the way it does. But that's kind of the point of reincarnation, is for you to remember who you are as a soul. And the only way that you can remember that is if you forget first. Okay, so at the beginning of this YouTube video, I said, I'm going to explain to you third-party corroboration, third-party validation. If you decide to go watch stories of people telling stories about past lives that they've lived, reincarnation stories. Remember that at the beginning of this video? I was showing you the YouTube videos, the reincarnation marathon videos, right? So the stories that I want you to look out for are instances where, for example, the little kid says something about some life that they used to live, and then they go corroborate that story. They go find records of this person to verify it, or just something like that. Third-party corroboration, right? That's empirical. And by the way, there's lots of those kinds of stories. If you spend time looking at this stuff, you're going to find them everywhere. That's the best kind of evidence. So that's how the soul works. You also have like the fact that you don't seem to remember your past lives when you're just in the course of ordinary everyday life. Like you're sitting in your chair there and you're like, I don't remember any of that stuff. Why is that? Well, it's because this is a whole other conversation about like chakras and how those work. These appear to be little tiny black holes, little singularities. And I'm not going to go too deep into that. Maybe when my book comes out, you can read the book. But what's really going on is, like a black hole, information cannot cross the event horizon. Certain information cannot cross the event horizon. So that's why you have to go into like a trance state to be able to remember past lives. So that's why that is. You have to go beyond the event horizon, and it's built into your chakras. So that's maybe another video, or I'll be publishing a book in a few years about all this stuff. So there you go, guys. That's how the soul works. That's reincarnation. I hope you found this video very fascinating and informative. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.